The wind howled across the broken land. The sky above was black, filled with clouds that never moved. Ice covered the ground like a grave. The planet was dying, and so was she. The alien sat against a wall of rock, her body weak and trembling. Her skin, once bright with life, had turned pale and cracked. She wrapped her thin arms around a small creature that lay close to her chest. It was her pet, the last living thing she had left. Its fur was frozen stiff, and its breaths came slow, like it too was ready to give up. She pressed her face against the creature's head. Tears rolled down her cheeks, freezing before they could fall. "Stay," she whispered in her own tongue. But she knew it could not stay much longer. The silence of the planet was heavy. Long ago there had been voices, her people, her family, her friends. Now the cities were gone, burned to ash in the war. The sky had fallen quiet. The ground no longer sang with footsteps. Only she remained and her pet. The cold bit deeper into her bones. She closed her eyes, remembering warm days under a golden sun, remembering laughter, remembering when she had been loved. But the memory hurt too much. She opened her eyes again, staring into the endless night. Her pet whimpered, a soft sound that broke the silence. She hugged it tighter. "It's okay," she whispered. "We'll sleep soon." She had no food, no fire, no reason to keep breathing, and then light. At first, she thought it was her mind playing tricks. A shimmer in the distance, low across the dead horizon. She blinked, forcing her eyes open wide. Yes. There. Faint but real. A shape moved in the sky. A bright glow cut through the storm clouds. Something was flying, slow and heavy. She gasped. Her first thought was fear. The war had left her with only one truth. When shadows came from the sky, they brought death. The glow grew closer. A deep sound rolled across the air. Machines, engines, something alive with power. She pressed her body against the cold stone curling around her pet. "No," she whispered. "Not again." The ship descended lower, sending snow spinning across the ground. Her heart raced. She was too weak to run, too weak to fight. This was the end. She would die as her people had died. The ship landed with a hiss. Steam rose from its sides. A door opened. Light spilled out like a sunrise, blinding in the dark. Shadows moved inside the light, figures stepping down onto the frozen land. She tried to make herself smaller. Her pet whimpered louder, pressing into her chest. She stroked it one last time, whispering, "I am here." The figures walked closer. They were tall, wrapped in strange suits of metal and glass. Their faces were hidden, glowing lights on their helmets. They looked like giants, like creatures of another world. Her breath caught in her throat. Were they enemies? Executioners? Or something else? One of the figures stopped a few steps away. It looked down at her, tilting its head. She could not see its eyes, but she felt it studying her. Another figure lifted a strange device and waved it slowly, scanning. She heard strange clicks, beeps, words spoken in a language she could not understand. Her fear grew. She squeezed her pet tight, whispering a farewell. If they killed her now, at least she would not die alone. The first figure knelt down. Slowly. Gently. Its movements were careful, like it did not want to scare her. A gloved hand reached forward. She froze, her chest pounding. The hand stopped just in front of her, open, waiting. She stared at it. What was this? Not an attack, not a weapon, just a hand. Her pet whimpered again. She felt its body shaking. She looked at the creature, then back at the glowing face above her. The hand did not move closer. It only waited, her lips trembled. Her body told her to pull back. Her memory screamed not to trust, but something inside her heart whispered, maybe this is not death. Maybe this is different. She lifted one shaking arm, her claws quivering in the cold. Slowly, painfully, she reached out, her hand touched the glove. Warmth. Real warmth. Not the bite of the wind, not the sting of ice. Warmth. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time since her world had burned, she felt hope, and then she thought, maybe we will not die tonight. The alien sat frozen in place, her claws still resting on the strange hand. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, frightened breaths. The giant figure in front of her did not move. The glowing helmet gave away no face, no eyes, no smile, only silence and the steady hum of machines around them. Then another figure stepped forward. This one carried something long and black in its arms. A weapon. She gasped, pulling her pet tighter to her chest. Her body shook with terror. Was this all a cruel trick? Offer hope, then strike it down? The two giants spoke in low voices, words she could not understand. Their sounds were rough, heavy but not cruel. They seemed to argue. The one with the weapon pointed at her, then back at the ship. The kneeling figure shook its head. Their voices grew louder, her mind spun. She did not know their meaning, but she understood one thing. They were deciding her fate. She looked at her pet. Its small eyes blinked slowly, too tired to stay open. She whispered in her language, "Stay with me, please, stay." The second figure sighed, lowering the weapon. Then it turned back toward the ship. More shadows moved at the door. She counted 3, 4, maybe 5, a whole group, all giants, all unknown. The kneeling one lifted its hand again, not to touch her, but to point, toward the light of the ship. It spoke again, softer now, a tone she almost recognized. Not anger, not threat, something else, was it? Asking her to follow. Her legs felt weak. She could not walk far. The cold had eaten her strength, left her close to death. She shook her head, hugging her pet tighter. "No," she whispered, though they could not know her words. The figure tilted its head again, then reached to its chest. With slow, careful hands, it pulled a small device free and pressed a button. A beam of gentle warmth flowed out, like sunlight in the frozen dark. It held the device toward her. Heat touched her skin. She gasped softly, almost crying. Warmth, real warmth. It was not a trick. She felt her body loosen, her trembling slow. Her pet stirred, opening its eyes wider. The giant spoke again, its voice low and calm. It pushed the device closer, but not too close. Always waiting, always giving her a choice. She looked at her pet. Its ears twitched, and it gave a weak but hopeful sound. She swallowed hard. Perhaps she could try. With shaking arms, she pushed herself up against the rock wall. Pain shot through her body. She nearly fell back down, but the figure's hand moved forward, steady and ready. She froze again, fear racing through her chest, but the hand did not grab her. It stayed open, patient. She leaned against it just enough to steady her balance. Her pet whimpered softly. She whispered, "We will try," though the words were only for her own heart. The group began to move back toward the ship. The kneeling figure stood tall again, keeping close to her side. Step by step, they led her across the frozen ground. The ship loomed larger now, lights glowing warm in the endless dark. Steam hissed from its sides, and the open door shone like fire. She squinted, her weak eyes watering. It was so bright, so alive. Every step was a battle. Her body screamed to stop, to fall, to sleep forever in the snow. But each time she faltered, the giant beside her slowed, waiting for her to catch her breath. No pushing, no force, just patience. At last they reached the edge of the ramp. The warm air spilled out, wrapping around her face. It was like breathing life itself. Her pet wriggled weakly, lifting its head toward the heat. She felt tears fall again. The figure bent low, pointing to the door. Its voice was soft, urging. She hesitated. To step inside was to trust strangers, to trust giants, to trust the unknown. Her claws dug into the fur of her pet. She whispered, "We cannot die here. We must try." She took the first step onto the ramp. Her legs nearly gave way, but the warmth pulled her forward. One step, another. The metal beneath her feet rang like bells in the frozen silence. Inside, the air was thick, rich with oxygen. Her chest burned as she breathed it in, almost too much after the thin air outside. She stumbled, coughing. At once the figure reached to steady her, but gently. Her vision blurred. She felt her pet's heart beating against her chest. For the first time in endless days, it was beating stronger. The door hissed closed behind her. The storm outside was gone. The cold was gone. She was inside. She collapsed to her knees, too weak to stand. The giants gathered around her, their voices low but urgent. Lights flashed from their devices, scanning her pet. She did not understand their words, but she understood their eyes. Or at least she imagined she could. They were not enemies, they were trying to help. She pressed her face against her pet's fur, sobbing quietly. The warmth surrounded her, carrying her out of death's grip. And for the first time since her world had burned, she thought, maybe there is a future. The alien woke to warmth. At first, she thought it was a dream. Her skin was no longer frozen, her breath no longer sharp with pain. She lay on something soft, something smooth. A blanket covered her body. For a moment, she forgot the endless cold. the silence of death. Then she remembered. The giants, the lights, the strange ship. Her eyes shot open. The ceiling above her glowed with a soft white light. The air was thick but clean, rich with warmth. Machines hummed all around. She sat up quickly, her chest rising and falling with panic. Her pet lay beside her, wrapped in a small cloth. Its fur was no longer stiff. It stirred, blinking, then made a soft sound. Alive. Truly alive. Relief flooded her heart, but fear still gripped her mind. Voices. She turned her head. A wall of glass stood nearby. On the other side, two of the giants watched her. They wore no helmets now. Their faces were strange. Flat skin, small noses, eyes that looked too soft to belong to predators. Their mouths moved as they spoke to each other. She could not understand their language. The sounds were heavy like stone breaking, but carried tones of worry, of thought. Her claws tightened on the blanket. Were they waiting for her to weaken so they could cut her open? Were they studying her like a creature in a cage? The door opened. Another giant stepped inside. This one carried a tray with objects, metal, glass, and a bowl that steamed. The smell reached her nose, rich and warm. Food. Her stomach twisted with hunger. She had not eaten in many days. But fear made her shrink back. What if it was poison? What if they wished to test her, to see how long she would suffer? The giant placed the tray on a table and slowly stepped back. It spoke not in anger, not in command, but in something that sounded gentle. The voice rose and fell like water over stone. She clutched her pet tighter, shaking her head. No. She would not eat. She would not fall into their trap. The giant frowned, then did something strange. It lifted the bowl itself and brought it to its own lips. It took a long sip, swallowing the steam. Then it set the bowl down again, pushing it closer to her. Her breath caught. It had eaten first. If it was poison, the giant would be dead. But it was not. Her pet whimpered softly, its nose twitching. It wanted the food. Its weak body leaned toward the smell. She hesitated, then slowly pulled the bowl closer. The liquid was thick, strange, but warm. She lifted it to her mouth and tasted. Salt, heat, life. Her body shivered as the warmth spread inside her. She drank again, this time deeper until the bowl was half empty. Her pet gave a soft cry. She held it near the bowl, letting it lap a few drops. Its eyes brightened. Its tail moved for the first time in days. She pressed her forehead to its fur, tears filling her eyes. They would live another day. The giant made a sound, a smile in its voice. She looked up, meeting its eyes. They were brown, soft, watching her with something she had not seen in a long time. Not hunger, not cruelty, care. Her chest tightened. Could she believe this? Could she trust? The giant slowly raised its hand, palm open, just as the one outside had done in the snow, a gesture of peace. She stared at it, remembering the warmth of the glove. Her claws trembled. Her pet looked up at her, then at the giant, then back again. It gave a tiny chirp, as if urging her forward. She lifted her hand slowly, not touching, only showing. The giant did not move closer, only lowered its hand, giving her space. For the first time, the fear in her chest weakened. Not gone, but weaker. She lay back down, pulling the blanket around her and her pet. The giant spoke again, their voices fading as they left the room. The door closed softly, leaving her alone. Silence returned, but not the silence of death. A different silence, a silence filled with questions. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the ship. Her pet curled against her, already asleep. She stroked its fur, whispering in her tongue, "Maybe they will not hurt us, maybe." Her eyes grew heavy, but she fought the sleep. She did not want to close her eyes, not here in the den of strangers. But the warmth was too much. Her body, broken by the cold, needed rest. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was not of death, not of the war, not of the ruins. It was of the giant's eyes, soft, patient, waiting, and she wondered, could trust grow in the heart of an enemy? The alien woke again to warmth and light. Days had passed, she could not count how many, for the ship had no sunrise, no sunset. Only soft lamps and the hum of engines. But her body was stronger now. Her skin had color again. Her pet walked with small, careful steps, no longer trembling. And the giants, the humans, as she now knew them, were still there, watching, waiting, helping. At first, they had spoken to her in their strange tongue. She had not understood, only stared in silence. But the humans had not stopped trying. They pointed at things. They repeated sounds. They made signs with their hands. Slowly, Painfully, she began to see patterns. One day, a human pointed at itself and said, "Human." Then it pointed at her and waited. She looked down, unsure. With a trembling voice, she spoke her name. The human repeated it, clumsy but soft. Then it smiled. Her chest tightened. They wanted to know her, not just study her. The next day, the same human pointed at her pet. "Pet," it said. Then it looked at her. She shook her head. "Not pet," she whispered. She placed her hand on the small creature's head. "Family." The human tilted its head, thinking. Then it nodded slowly. "Family." Her eyes filled with tears. The word was simple, but it carried weight. Family, yes. That was the truth. Bit by bit, they built a bridge of words. Not many, but enough. Enough to say food or water is safe. Enough to point at the stars outside the window and whisper home. One evening, they brought her to a large room. The walls were dark, but the ceiling glowed with countless points of light. Stars. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat. The room was alive with maps of the galaxy, lines of light traced between stars showing paths of travel. She reached out her hand, touching one glowing point. The human beside her spoke, pointing to a cluster of stars. Earth. The word echoed in the room, strong and proud. Our home. She stared at the glowing dot. So small, yet filled with life. She whispered her own world's name, pressing her claws to another point of light. Her voice shook. Gone. The human grew quiet. Its eyes softened, filled with sorrow. Slowly, it placed a hand on her shoulder. She stiffened at the touch, then let it stay. The warmth was not cruel. The warmth was comfort. Her pet climbed onto her lap, purring softly. The humans laughed gently, reaching out to stroke its fur. It closed its eyes, leaning into their touch. She watched in wonder. Her companion, once weak and dying, now played with these strangers as if they had always been friends. The barrier between them began to break. That night, she tried to speak more. She used her hands, her claws, her few human words. She told them, slowly, brokenly, about the war. About fire falling from the sky. About her people running, hiding, dying. She drew shapes in the air, pointed at stars, mimed explosions. The humans listened in silence, their faces heavy. Tears ran down her cheeks as she whispered the last part. All gone. Her pet pressed against her chest, sensing her pain. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then one of the humans, the same who had taught her family, placed a hand over its heart. Its voice was steady but soft. You, not gone, family. Her breath caught. She looked up at the human, her vision blurred with tears. Family. Again that word. Again that promise. Could it be true? Could these strangers, these humans, truly mean it? She leaned against her pet, closing her eyes. For the first time, she felt something stronger than fear. A fragile hope. The days that followed grew lighter. She learned more words, enough to laugh when they mispronounced her name, enough to teach them small phrases of her own tongue. They shared their food with her. She shared her songs with them, soft humming sounds her people once sang under the golden sun. The humans listened, eyes shining. One even tried to hum along, clumsy but eager. She laughed, a sound she had thought was lost forever. Trust was still fragile, like thin glass, but it was there. And deep inside she felt a spark. If the humans could understand her story, maybe they could also understand her warning, because the shadow that had destroyed her world was still out there. And if it found them, it would not stop. She hugged her pet close and stared out the window at the stars. For now she was safe. For now she was not alone. But the universe was not finished with her yet. The ship drifted through the endless dark. From the windows the alien often stared at the stars. They looked peaceful, silent, beautiful. But she knew the truth. Behind that beauty lived monsters. The humans smiled as they worked. They fixed machines, shared food, even joked with each other. Their laughter filled the metal halls. Sometimes she joined them, repeating simple words, and they laughed with joy when she learned. For a moment it almost felt like home, but her heart was never fully calm. She could not forget the screams of her people, the fire that fell from the sky, the shadow that had ended her world, and one night as she looked out the window she saw it again, a flicker. A glimmer of light far away, moving where no star should move. Her breath froze in her chest. She knew that glow. She knew the way it hunted, how it followed, how it never let go. The shadow had found her. She backed away from the window, clutching her pet. It whimpered, sensing her fear. She whispered in her tongue, Not again. Please, not again, the humans noticed. One of them touched her shoulder, asking if she was ill. She shook her head, then pointed out the window. She mimed fire falling, destruction, death. Her voice trembled as she repeated one human word she had learned. Danger. The humans grew quiet. They followed her to the window, staring out into the dark. At first they saw nothing. But then the flicker came again, brighter now. A ship. They spoke quickly to each other, their voices sharp. She understood nothing, but she knew their tone. Alarm. Worry. Fear. The ship's lights grew stronger. It was coming closer. Her legs shook as memories tore through her mind, the sound of her city falling, the cries of her people, the cold silence that followed. She hugged her pet tighter, whispering, "They will not stop." They never stop. The humans moved fast. Lights flashed across the control panels. Doors sealed. Engines roared to life. The ship turned, fleeing into the stars. She stumbled into the main room, watching as the humans worked. They pressed buttons, pulled levers, voices rising louder and louder. The screen showed the shadow ship growing larger behind them. She cried out, pointing, screaming words they did not know. She pounded the glass screen, trying to show them. Her claws scratched deep marks. "Run, run!" One human grabbed her arms, holding her still. Its eyes locked onto hers. Its voice was steady but firm. "Safe," she shook her head wildly. "No safe, danger." She slammed her fist against her chest, then pointed back at the stars. Her voice broke into sobs. "My world gone. Yours next." The human's face changed. It understood. Maybe not the whole story, but enough. It nodded once, firm, then shouted to the others. The ship shook as engines screamed. They dove into the darkness, racing through the void, but the shadow followed. Hours passed. Or maybe only minutes, it was hard to tell. The alien sat against the wall, her pet in her arms, watching the humans fight for survival. Every alarm, every flash of red light reminded her of her people's final day. And then, silence. The ship steadied. The humans looked at each other, their voices calm again. The shadow ship was gone, or so they thought. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Not gone. Never gone." She had seen it before. The shadow did not leave. It waited, it hunted. It always returned. That night she could not sleep. She sat awake, her pet curled in her lap, staring out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there the shadow lurked. She could feel it in her bones. The humans did not yet understand. They thought they had escaped. They thought their clever machines could keep them safe. But she knew the truth. The shadow had destroyed her people, not because they were weak, but because they were alive. And now it had seen the humans. She stroked her pet's fur, her voice soft but filled with sorrow. "I cannot lose another family." Her pet purred weakly, pressing against her chest. She looked toward the humans, who were now laughing again, trying to bring peace after the storm. They were brave, yes. Kind, yes. But they did not know what waited in the dark, and soon they would have to learn. The alien had not slept in many nights, even inside the warm ship, even with food and care. Her mind carried only one image: the shadow ship. She felt it in her bones, waiting in the dark, just as it had waited for her people. The humans did not yet understand. They worked calmly, checked machines, and joked with each other. They believed they were safe. But safety was a lie. She knew the shadow never stopped. It always returned, and one day it did. The alarm screamed through the ship. Red lights flashed across the walls. The alien ran to the main room, her pet clinging to her chest. On the wide screen, a shape appeared behind them. Vast, black, sharp as a blade. The shadow ship. Her breath broke. She cried out in her tongue, falling to her knees. "No, not again." The humans spoke quickly, their voices sharp with fear. They pulled levers, pressed buttons, tried to flee. But the shadow was faster. It filled the screen like a mountain in the stars. The alien pounded the floor with her fists. Memories clawed through her mind. Her cities burning, her people screaming, the shadow's fire raining down. She covered her head, rocking back and forth. Her pet whimpered, pressing close. Then she felt hands on her shoulders. Gentle, firm. She looked up. A human knelt before her, eyes steady. "Tell us," it said slowly. The words were broken but clear. "You." No, her breath caught. Yes, she knew. She knew everything. She stared at the screen, then back at the human. Fear strangled her voice, but she forced the words out. "They kill. They hunt, no escape." She clutched her chest. My people gone. Fire, war, all gone. The human's eyes darkened. It nodded once, then shouted to the others. Their voices rose, fast, urgent. The ship shook as they armed weapons, shields glowing on the screen. But she shook her head, tears spilling down her face. No fight. You die. The human gripped her hands. Its voice was strong, unyielding. Fight, together. Her heart pounded. Together. Was that possible? She had seen her people fight. They had fallen. What chance did these humans have yet? She looked into their eyes and saw no fear. They were small, fragile compared to the shadow, but their will burned bright. Her pet stirred, pressing its tiny head into her hand. She held it close, trembling. If she stayed silent, they would die blind. If she spoke, maybe, just maybe, they would live. Slowly, she stood. She pointed at the screen, at the shadow ship, then drew shapes in the air, its weapons, its traps, its hunger. She mimed explosions, fire, the way it circled before striking. The humans watched closely, their eyes sharp, their minds turning. They began to adjust their controls, change their plans, set traps of their own. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to keep speaking. Weak here, she said, pointing to a spot on the shadow ship. Shield weak. Strike here. The humans nodded, repeating her word. Weak, here. For the first time she felt something new, not just fear, not just despair. A spark, hope, but still the weight of choice pressed on her. She could hide with her pet, let the humans fight and fall, or she could stand with them, risk everything and face the nightmare that had destroyed her world. Her claws dug into the metal floor. Her eyes burned with tears. She remembered her family, their screams, their final moments. She remembered holding her pet in the snow, waiting for death. And she remembered the human hand that had reached for hers, offering warmth instead of death. Slowly, she whispered, "No more running." The humans turned to her. She lifted her chin, her voice stronger. "I fight. With you." Their faces lit with fierce smiles. One human handed her a small device, simple, glowing with power. A weapon. She took it with shaking claws, feeling its weight. Her pet whined softly, climbing onto her shoulder. She stroked its fur, whispering, "We fight together." The humans gathered around her, voices firm, ready. She could not understand their words, but she understood their spirit. They would not surrender. They would not kneel. The ship shook as the shadow drew closer, its weapons charging. Lights blazed across the dark, painting the stars in red. The alien stood tall, weapon in her hands, her heart pounding. She was still afraid, how could she not be? But fear no longer ruled her. She had chosen. Together they would stand. Together they would fight. And maybe, just maybe, they would survive. The shadow ship filled the stars like a monster of steel. Its black surface shone with deadly fire. Weapons glowed, ready to strike. The alien's chest tightened. This was the end. She had seen this before. She had watched her world burn under that same glow. But this time she was not alone. The humans stood around her, calm but fierce. Their eyes burned with defiance. Their hands moved across controls, voices sharp and strong. The ship shook with power as engines roared, as weapons came alive. The alien clutched her small weapon, her claws trembling. Her pet pressed against her shoulder, giving a soft cry. She whispered, "We will not run." "Not this time!" The shadow fired first. A blast of fire streaked through space, slamming against the human ship. The walls trembled. Sparks flew. The alien cried out, falling to her knees. But the humans held steady. They raised shields, their ship glowing with light. The human captain shouted a word she now understood. "Fight!" The human ship turned, firing back. Bright bolts of energy streaked across the stars, striking the shadow's hull. The alien pointed with her claws. "There, weak! Strike there!" The humans followed her guidance. Their weapons burned into the weak point she had shown. The shadow's shield flared, trembling. For the first time she saw it hesitate. But the shadow was vast. It struck again, harder. Another blast rocked the ship. Alarms screamed. The alien held her pet close, heart pounding. For a moment, fear almost broke her. Then she saw the humans, bruised, bleeding, but still standing. They did not cry out. They did not kneel. They fought. Something inside her heart cracked open. She rose to her feet, gripping her weapon. She joined the humans at the controls, her claws moving alongside their hands. She mimed patterns, showed them tricks her people once used. She fought with them, not as a guest but as family. The battle raged. The stars lit with fire. The human ship twisted and turned, small but fast, darting like an insect against the giant predator. The shadow struck again and again, but the humans refused to fall. At last, the shadow shifted, revealing its core. The alien's breath caught. This was it, the true weak point. Her people had never reached it. They had died before they could strike. She slammed her claws against the screen. Now, strike now. The humans understood. They poured all power into one final shot. The ship screamed, engines burning red, weapons glowing brighter than the stars. The blast struck true. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the shadow ship shook, fire ripping across its hull. Its black surface cracked, breaking apart. A soundless explosion filled the void, a flower of fire blooming against the dark. The alien gasped, tears spilling down her face. The shadow was falling. The monster that had ended her people was dying. The human crew cheered, voices rising in triumph. Some hugged each other, some wept. The alien fell to her knees, clutching her pet, sobbing into its fur. The human captain stepped forward, kneeling beside her. Its hand rested on her shoulder. Safe, it said simply. She looked up, vision blurred with tears. Safe. A word she thought she would never know again. The shadow ship broke apart fully, its pieces burning into nothing. The stars grew quiet once more. The alien whispered, "My people. Gone, but you? Saved." The captain shook its head. Its eyes were steady, filled with fire. Not just saved, family. Her chest ached. She pressed her forehead against her pet, whispering, "Family." The word was not of her tongue, but it felt right. For the first time since the war, since the cold, since the silence, she felt more than survival. She felt belonging. The humans guided her to the window. Together they stared at the stars. The galaxy stretched wide before them, filled with both danger and hope. Her voice was soft but strong. Darkness always comes, but light fights back. The captain nodded. Humanity always fights back. Her pet gave a cheerful cry, small but brave. The humans laughed, reaching to pet it. She smiled through her tears. She had been ready to die in the cold alone with her last friend. But humanity had given her more than warmth. They had given her courage, hope, and family, and in that moment she believed the shadows of the universe could be defeated. Not by fear, not by strength alone, but by the fire in the hearts of these strange creatures called humans. She placed her clawed hand against the glass, staring at the stars. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of her soul. Humanity is light.